You're listening to the Marriage Clinic Podcast, a podcast on love, marriage, and personal development. Our purpose is to inspire and equip you with knowledge and skills to enable you have lasting and fulfilling relationships. Now, your host, Joshua Margaret.
Hello, welcome to the Marriage Clinic Podcast. It's a podcast about love, marriage, and personal development. And as always, I'm your host, Joshua Mogri. And today we are going to be going into a very interesting but sad, sometimes sad subject. So please put some fire in the chat so that we know you are here with us. I'll give you a minute to share. To like, to share, to follow. Send this link to a friend or two so that they can hop onto the Marriage Clinic tribe as we try to figure out all these things about marriage and relationships. I think last week we were talking about keeping a relationship with your ex even after marriage. And today I'm going to be talking more to the single folk, the single people out there. This is a big one for a lot of people. And I had a conversation with someone this week about it. And I said, hey, let's do a podcast on it. So let's go. Today, I'm speaking to you about when your parents say no to the marriage. When your parents say no to the marriage. As I like to do, I always like to start with a scripture. And I'm going to give an ironic scripture. Ephesians 6 verse 2. Ephesians 6 verse 2. It says, honor your father and mother. This is the first commandment with a promise. So honor your father and mother. This is the first commandment with a promise. Sometimes you could be in a relationship for a couple of months or for a number of years. And when the time comes when you want to settle down and you go to talk to your mom or your dad that I've decided I want to settle down. I want to get married to so and so. They could say, no, we don't agree. Or sometimes they ask a few questions. What's his name? Where does he come from? What does he do for a living? After they've asked a number of questions, they say, no, we don't support this relationship. And we cannot in good conscience support you to get married. Now, when that happens, immediately you may think your world is coming to an end, but the world is not coming to an end. Please be patient. I'm going to coach you and help you on ways with which you can deal with such a situation. The first thing you need to know is that this is a very difficult place to be in. If while you're watching or listening to this podcast, you are in this particular space where your parents don't want to give support to your relationship, it can be difficult. It can be painful. And if you are the person that is being discriminated against, your self-esteem could take a hit. Your self-esteem could take a hit. So to the person that is being discriminated against, I'm saying sorry. To the person whose parents are telling you that they are not going to allow you to go ahead with a marriage to so-and-so, I would also still say sorry. So now here's the thing. It is a test of the relationship, and how the two of you handle it can prove whether the relationship is going to be successful or this is going to be another one for the stories. So be careful about how you approach it. Now, I would advise, let's say, for instance, for the lack of a better example, let's say the lady tells her parents that I want to get married to, we always look for a name off the fly. Let's say Jack. Okay, so let's say I want to get married to Jack, and the mom says, no, we can't allow you to get married to Jack. I would advise the lady, let's call her Evelyn. So we are looking at Evelyn and we are looking at Jack. I sincerely hope There's no one out there with this problem who is called Evelyn or Jack. But I would advise Evelyn that don't immediately pick up a phone and call Jack and start crying and saying, my mom says no, they don't want me to marry you, and so on and so forth. Because it's possible that the issue could be solved quickly. But if you already told Jack that my family doesn't want you, if you do get married, it has potential to create problems post-marital. So I would say, for a start, don't be in a hurry to tell your partner that the answer has been no. All right? Discrimination is wrong. Discrimination is wrong when you are discriminated against because of your ethnicity, especially in a lot of African countries. You would hear them saying probably a Dagomba shouldn't get married to an Ewe, a Yoruba shouldn't get married to an Igbo. You could mention the various tribes that we have out there, that it could be discrimination on ethnicity. It could also be discrimination due to the color of one's skin. Probably you're studying somewhere in Scandinavia, you meet this lovely guy called Jack, and you come back home and tell your mom that I want to get married to Jack, and then she says, no, we don't want Oyibo in the family. Or it could be based on religion, and sometimes religious denominations. Or sometimes the discrimination is based on financial reasons. For whatever reasons you are being discriminated against, it's not good to be discriminated. Now, having said that, let me also add that the blessings of your parents in marriage is very important. When you are getting married, for your mom and your dad to say, we are giving you our blessing for this marriage, is extremely important. So I would advise, and here we go, I would advise, as much as possible, get your parents' consent, and as much as possible, don't go against what your parents are saying. I wouldn't advise anyone to get married against their parents' will, unless it's with regards to issues of faith. That's the only caveat I often say, okay, you can go against it. Let's say, for instance, a young girl comes into the Christian faith and her parents are still traditionalists, and her parents say, we are not going to allow you to marry a Christian, we want you to marry a traditionalist. In that case, I support positive defiance. But apart from that, for the rest of the issues that we do have, I would advise that you try to work your way through it. Try to work your way through it. Now back to the issue. Let me get back to the issue at hand. And let me get back to the issue at hand. Okay, so here we go. If your parents have said, no, we're not going to allow you to marry Jack. I think it was Evelyn. Evelyn, we are not going to allow you to marry Jack. What should Evelyn do? Number one, Evelyn should pray about it. I'm a person of faith. And I believe that we lead with prayer in everything that we do. Evelyn should pray about it. Start to pray about the situation. Ask God to touch the heart of your parents and help them to see Jack for who he is. Help them to see Jack for who he is. So pray about the situation. So the first thing we do is we pray about the situation. The second thing we do is what I say, research. You need to know why your parents don't want you to marry Jack in the first place. So get to the root of the issue. Ask your parents. Like, for instance, there was one time a lady wanted to get married, marry a guy from a particular tribe, and the family said no. As she investigated, her family told her that one of your aunties married into that family, and when the husband passed away, she was treated so terribly because of the widowhood rights. And we have sworn that we would not let any of our daughters marry from such a tribe that has such widowhood rights. So in that case, your family is not totally wrong. They have just decided that they want to protect your interest. So get to the root of the issue. Sometimes they just feel Jack cannot take care of you. Other times they feel like your educational level and your status is so high up there, the two of you may say you are in love, but you are not going to really be able to connect. And sometimes it's just negative biases. I don't like the way he looks, or I have someone else who is richer than him that wants to get married to you. But until you find out the reason why, you won't be able to decide as to, am I listening to my parents or am I trying to change their mind? And when you do listen to your parents, if what they are saying makes sense, then you may have to take a decision that, you know what, I don't think I want to continue. I've seen situations where parents object because of the sickling status of both parties. They are probably AS, and the parents tell them, you know what, you are AS, she's AS. If you get married, the chances that you're going to have a sickle cell child is high, and we don't want you. Having children in itself is a problem, but we don't want you to battle with these problems. So sometimes the reason in your research, you find out that the reason why they are objecting may be good, and other times you find out that they are just baseless. For whatever the reason, please do your research, all right? Number three, the third thing to do is, I like to call it fraternizing with the enemy. Fraternizing with the enemy. You need, and probably you should have done this before you told your parents you wanted to get married to him. You need to get Jack to meet your family as a friend. You need to introduce Jack to them first. They should get to know him first before they get to know he has intentions of marrying you. Because it's difficult for people to hate people they know. So if he's come around, he's been nice to them, he's shown his good side, now there's a face to, I don't like this person. But once they don't know him from Adam, their decisions and their choices may be on intuition, may be on revelation, or basically on preconceived ideas. So number 3 is fraternize with the enemy. Get your boyfriend or your girlfriend to meet with your family members. Start with the nicest family members. Sometimes it has to be with your sisters first, and then they get to meet. If you know your dad is more calm, he gets to meet your dad then, so that there are people who can say good things about him, or people who can say good things about her to your spouse. All right? Fraternize with the enemy. People fear what they don't understand. And sometimes after they put a face to the person, they are less likely to object. Brings me to number 4. Number 4, I like to call Operation Divide and Conquer. Operation Divide and Conquer. If you're watching it on social media, just type in there Divide and Conquer. Divide and Conquer. You can put D and C. Divide and conquer. Now, here's the thing about divide and conquer. If both your parents say they don't want you to get married to the person, one of them is the leader of the objection, and the other one is following. So sometimes it's your mother that does not want you to marry the person, and your dad is going along with your mother. Or sometimes it's your father and your mom is going ahead. You need to identify who is the weaker of the two and begin to work on that person first. So if the problem, I don't like to say problem, but if the problematic person is your mom, then you go to your dad. This is when you cry to your dad, you sit on your dad's lap, you tell him, Daddy, what's going on? Won't you talk to mommy? So once you drive in that wedge and you are now convincing one to speak to the other, chances are that they are going to be convinced. So Operation Divide and Conquer. So as you can see, you just don't throw your hands up into the air when they say we don't want you to marry this person and think that that is the end of life. There are various things you can do step by step to convince them. And you are taking it step by step. Probably you pray and in a couple of days, they are like, we objected, but no, but yes. Or you begin to do your research, and as you are even asking your parents the questions, they realize that their grounds for objection really do not hold water, as we like to say, and they may change their mind. Or at the level of when they get to meet the person, their perceptions about the person may change. And then when it comes to divide and conquer, then you may have one parent now talking to the other person and saying, hey, look, it's not that common to find a responsible man to say they want to marry our daughter. Maybe let's not spoil her chance. Or your mom wakes your dad up in the middle of the night and says, hey, if your boyfriend is called Jack, maybe your dad is called Jeffrey. So says, hey, Jeffrey, Evelyn really is in love with the guy. Do we really want our daughter to hate us because of this? And then maybe your dad will reconsider. Then brings us to the fifth thing you can do. The fifth thing you can do is what I like to call SOS. Save our souls. SOS. If all the above have failed, you may need to bring in someone they respect. You may need to bring in someone they respect. It could be their parents. It could be an uncle. It could be a pastor. It could be anyone. You just need to know people that your parents have reverence for, who can speak on your behalf. But here's the thing, that step is a bit dangerous, because it can either get your parents to be so entrenched, or it can soften their hearts. So don't go there first. Try all the others. But you go and you make your case to someone they respect. Let's say you have an uncle. Let's say your dad has a senior brother that you're really cool with. Really, really cool with. And you go talk to your uncle and explain the situation to him and say, can you speak for me? Or you go to your grandma, go cry to your grandma and say, Daddy says he's not going to allow me to get married to so-and-so because of ABCD. And your grandma listens to you. If the person they respect agrees with you, then they are able to side with you and they now become your advocate in the situation. As I said, it is very important you remember that this should be nearly a last resort. You don't go from they said no to looking for to SOS. All right. So this can either work or backfire, but this is your Hail Mary, as they like to say in certain sports. All right. Then that brings us to number 6. This is the make or break. Number 6 is make or break. At this point, your parents have either changed their stance and are more entrenched. And you at this point have to take a decision. Am I going to go ahead with my parents' consent? Or am I going to go ahead without my parents' consent? That's if they've said no. Or am I going to end the relationship because my parents said no? So now you have a choice. Am I going to choose Jack, or I'm going to choose my mom and my dad? All right. I sincerely hope, if you are in this situation, that their stance has changed. However, if they have not, this will be one of the biggest tests of your life. You risk losing your family's relationship, or you could go ahead and after a couple of months, I've seen situations where parents, after the marriage, they soften. And I've seen situations where parents do not talk to their children again till death after this situation. All right. So this is where you can either turn to Jack and say, hey, Jack, we have fought the good fights, but the time has come for us to be apart. Or you may turn to Jack and say, you are my ride or die. And till death do us part. We are like Romeo and Juliet. And people don't get us and all of that. So that is the make or break. Now, choosing to fight can lead to a lot of distress. If you choose to go against your parents' will, you could lose your parents. You could be disowned by your parents. You stand the risk of having a wedding where your parents do not show up. Your dream of your father walking you down the aisle, or your mom and dad being there to support you during the engagement, becomes difficult. And especially in African countries, the traditional wedding, which is the main wedding, becomes extremely difficult because certain families will not even want to negotiate without the consent of the other family. I've said this before. In Africa, we marry families. we don't marry individuals. So you really need to be careful. Sometimes too, I know couples that say, we really want your consent. We will not get married until we get your consent, but we are not breaking up either. So I've seen situations where people have postponed their wedding for 2 years. That's love. They've postponed for 2 years until the parents say yes. So wherever you are in this, I don't know where you are in this situation, but I sincerely hope that the advice I've given has been helpful and is going to help you either change your parents' mind or go ahead and break up. But let me say this. When your parents love you, have always had your good intentions at heart, object to someone, with the little experience I've had over a decade, unless it is on issues of faith, I would advise you listen to your parents. You can always get another boyfriend or girlfriend, but you cannot get another set of parents. So I would advise that you listen to your parents or try and convince them. I wouldn't advise that you get married against your parents' wish, but if you decide to go against your parents, I wish you luck. I pray for strength, and I pray that someday you will be able to reconcile with your parents. So take care. Next week, Thursday, we will be here. This is the Marriage Clinic podcast, and we'll be here next week, Thursday, once again, where I will bring you something fresh and something new. Stay tuned. Next week, Thursday, we are starting a new series, and you will love it. Bye.